For my C++ module at university, I was tasked with creating a 2D game in C++, and graphics had to be implemented using the SDL2 development library. I had roughly 3.5 months from the beginning of the module to the submission date. For the final game, there were 3 required components: the ability to shoot at enemies and demonstrate collision detection mechanics, a game map using tiled map mechanics, and scoring mechanics which could be measured and were demonstrated in a graphical user interface. Marks would also be awarded for additional features such as object pooling, collision within mapping, non-text UI elements, animated game elements, and more. A couple of weeks into the module, I settled on the idea of a skeleton who uses its ribs as weapons, throwing them like a boomerang. In retrospect, my scope for the game was far too large. It was going to include a brief backstory, multiple enemy types, different levels, and even collectibles. By the time I submitted my game for marking, ribs could be thrown at enemies, there were animations for the player and enemy sprites using sprite sheets, and there was a single tiled map with collisions, which also uses a sprite sheet and loads data from a text file. There were also health bars for the player and enemies. Since submitting the game, I have made the ribs spin as they travel in a straight line, as well as improved object pooling for ribs and zombies, resulting in better memory management. I have also been experimenting with adding more difficulty to the game, such as adding more zombies in a wave, making them faster, and making the player slower. In future, I will be exploring these options further, as well as looking at other mechanics such as the rate at which the player can throw ribs. The tile map takes data from a text file, which tells the program which segment of a sprite sheet needs to be rendered. The tile map also uses data from another text file to represent which tiles should be collided with. For movement, shooting, and interacting with ribs, the program checks for specific user input every frame, and if detected, sets a corresponding Boolean variable to be true. If a movement button is pressed, the player's position is moved a set number of units in the direction of input. If a shooting button is pressed, the program checks if the player has any ammo, and if enough time has passed since the last throw. If all these are true, the program finds the first rib in the ribs vector whose bool variable is throwable is true, and this rib is thrown in the direction of the mouse, and its isThrowable variable set to false. The player's ammo is also reduced by 1. If the interact button is pressed, the program checks if the player bounding box is overlapping with any of the rib bounding boxes, as well as if the rib has stopped moving. If all are true for any rib, that rib is moved off the screen, its isThrowable variable set to true, and 1 ammo added. Zombies spawn in groups of 6, as long as there are no other zombies active. They move left and right, changing direction when they hit a wall. If the player and zombie sprite overlap, the player takes damage. Zombies require 2 hits from ribs to be defeated, then they are moved off the screen. Hits are detected if a rib and zombie sprite overlap. One issue that I had a lot of difficulty with was zombies walking through walls that they should be colliding with, like in this clip here. In the tile map collisions file, wall tiles are represented with a 1, and other tiles that represent empty space, such as the floor, are represented with a 0. A for loop is used to iterate through every tile in every row, and if a collision is detected, the zombie's speed is multiplied by -1, making them turn around. As zombies have a greater height than 1 tile, it's possible for them to collide with more than 1 wall tile in a single frame. If a zombie collides with 2 wall tiles, its velocity is inverted twice, causing them to revert to their original speed value by the end of the frame, resulting in them not turning around. To resolve this, I added a hitWall Boolean variable to the zombie struct, which is set to true if a collision is detected. Before the loop, this value is set to false for each zombie so that the for loop does not skip a zombie that had a collision in a previous frame. Within the for loop, the value of this variable is checked, and collisions are only checked if the value is false, meaning a zombie can only collide once per frame. Early on in development, I had issues with getting the player to shoot in the direction of the mouse. After researching online, I found an SDL function, SDL getMouseState, that could return the X and Y coordinates of the mouse. Then, to throw ribs in the direction of the cursor, I had some help from a third-year demonstrator who knew of a function called atan2, which finds the angle between 2 points. I used this function to compare the mouse coordinates to the player's coordinates, which solved the issue. For a while, I had trouble getting a thrown rib to spin while in mid-air. Each rib moves in the direction of its assigned angle stored in the throw angle variable. Attempting to change this over time results in the rib curling in the air, making it difficult for the player to hit their target. To get around this, I created a new variable called spin angle, which is assigned the same value as throw angle, but only used within the SDL render copyX function for rendering. This allows the angle at which the rib is rendered to change every frame, while not affecting its direction of movement. Each frame, the value of spin angle is increased or decreased by 10, depending on if at the time of throwing, the mouse was to the right or left of the player respectively. This allows the rib to always look like it has top spin when thrown, making the game more realistic. One of the main issues with the game is that there is no audio at all. At the very least, some background music would really help bring some life to the game, and sound effects would improve immersion. I also think the game could be much more efficient. For example, the code for throwing a rib has a lot of pointers to the player class and its attributes, and not much code related to the class that the code is in. I have had more varied experience with C++ since submitting this game, and I've already made several changes to increase the efficiency of the code, and I believe rewriting parts of the program will dramatically improve this. However, the program has good memory management, as object pooling has been implemented for instances of the rib and zombies. Ultimately, I am happy with where Spare Ribs is in its current form, given the amount of time I have had to develop it. However, it is a game very much still in progress, and there is a lot of work to do. I do my best to make improvements to the game when I'm not in the midst of current university work, and will continue to update it when possible for the foreseeable future. For the remainder of the video, the gameplay in the background will play out until my character is defeated without any voiceover. Thank you for watching.